Close your eyes for a moment. Not to escape the world, but to listen to it from underneath. Beneath opinions. Beneath beliefs. Beneath the masks we wear so convincingly that we forget they are masks at all. This is where Friedrich Nietzsche begins. Not as a philosopher in the old sense. Not as a system builder. Not as a man offering answers meant to comfort. But as a psychologist. A surgeon of the soul. Long before Freud spoke of the unconscious. Long before modern psychology named repression, projection, sublimation. Nietzsche was already asking a more dangerous question. Not what people believe, but why they need to believe it. Not what is called moral, but who benefits from calling it moral. Not what truth is, but what kind of life needs this truth to survive. Nietzsche did not look at human beings and see rational animals. He saw wounded animals who learned to speak. He saw fear dressed up as virtue. Weakness disguised as goodness. Resentment turned into moral law. And he dared to say it out loud. Psychology, for Nietzsche, was not about healing first. It was about exposing. About tearing away the polite explanations we tell ourselves. Until the raw motives underneath are finally forced into the light. He believed that every philosophy is, at its core, a confession. A personal psychology written in abstract language. Every system of thought, every grand theory about reality, is secretly an autobiography. The philosopher does not discover truth, Nietzsche says. He reveals himself. His fears. His desires. His temperament. His sickness. His strength. This is why Nietzsche distrusted philosophers who claimed objectivity. Because no one thinks without a body. No one reasons without instincts. No one values without wounds. Behind every ought, there is a need. Behind every moral law, there is a psychological strategy for survival. Nietzsche's psychology begins with suspicion. Suspicion toward noble words. Suspicion toward lofty ideals. Suspicion toward anything that smells too pure. He asks, who is speaking? From what condition? With what hidden agenda? Take morality. For centuries, morality was treated as something divine. Given from above. Timeless. Universal. Nietzsche looks at morality and asks a very different question. Not, is it true? But, what kind of person needs this morality? And when he looks closely, he sees a history written not by the strong, but by the resentful. He calls this resentment ressentiment. A slow, poisonous emotion. Not explosive anger, but stored hatred. The hatred of those who cannot act. So they judge. The hatred of those who cannot create. So they condemn. The hatred of those who feel powerless. So they invent a world where power itself becomes evil. According to Nietzsche, much of traditional morality was born from psychological revenge. The weak could not defeat the strong physically. So they defeated them symbolically. They took natural strength and renamed it cruelty. They took confidence and renamed it arrogance. They took vitality and renamed it sin. And in doing so, they performed a psychological inversion. What once meant good, strong, noble, life-affirming, was replaced with a new, good, humble, obedient, suffering. This was not philosophy. This was psychology at work. A wounded psyche rewriting values to protect itself. Nietzsche saw this as one of the deepest psychological events in human history. And it did not end with religion. It continued in modern ideals. Equality. Selflessness. Absolute compassion. Nietzsche does not reject compassion. He questions it. He asks whether it arises from strength, or from an inability to endure suffering, especially one's own. For Nietzsche, the human psyche is not ruled by reason. It is ruled by forces, instincts, drives, will, and above all, the will to power. This phrase has been misunderstood endlessly. It does not mean domination over others. It means the fundamental psychological drive to expand, to express, to overcome resistance, to feel intensity, to shape the world and oneself. Even the desire to submit, Nietzsche says, is a form of will to power. The power to escape responsibility. The power to dissolve oneself into rules. The power to avoid becoming. This is where Nietzsche becomes truly psychological. He does not divide people into good and evil. He divides them into life-affirming and life-denying. Some psyches move toward growth, risk, tension, creation. Others move toward safety, stasis, certainty, comfort. Neither is accidental. Each reflects a psychological condition. Health or sickness. Strength or exhaustion. Nietzsche believed modern humanity was becoming psychologically tired. Over-civilized. Over-moralized. Over-explained. We no longer trusted instincts. We no longer listened to the body. We no longer allowed suffering to transform us. Instead, we medicated it. Moralized it. Explained it away. And in doing so, we weakened the psyche. One of Nietzsche's most radical psychological insights was his understanding of guilt. Guilt, he argued, was not born from moral awareness. It was born from debt, from obligation, from the psychological pressure of owing. Originally, guilt was concrete. You owed something. You failed to repay. You suffered consequences. But over time, this external debt turned inward. The psyche learned to punish itself. Conscience became internalized cruelty. The instinct to aggress outward was turned inward. And thus, the modern soul was born. An animal that tortures itself and calls it virtue. Nietzsche saw this as one of the deepest psychological tragedies of civilization. The human being became divided against itself. Instinct versus ideal. Body versus belief. Desire versus duty. And this inner war produced anxiety, depression, nihilism. Long before psychology had names for them. Nietzsche diagnosed nihilism not as a philosophical position, but as a psychological condition. A state where the highest values lose their power. Where meaning collapses. Where the psyche no longer knows why it should continue. God is dead, Nietzsche declares. Not as an attack, but as a diagnosis. The structures that once gave the psyche coherence no longer function. And modern man is left alone. With his drives, his fears, his emptiness. Psychology, in Nietzsche's hands, is not meant to soothe this condition. It is meant to confront it. He does not offer comfort. He offers transformation. The task, he says, is not to return to old beliefs, but to become strong enough to create new values. This requires a new type of human being. One who can endure uncertainty. One who can affirm life even in suffering. One who does not flee from depth. Nietzsche calls this figure the Overman. Not a biological upgrade, but a psychological one. A being who has integrated instinct and consciousness. Who no longer needs external authorities to tell him who he is. Who can say yes to life, even when life hurts. This is why Nietzsche despised pity when it weakened. Not because he lacked compassion, but because he understood the psyche. Pity can freeze a person in their suffering. It can turn pain into identity. It can make weakness permanent. Nietzsche wanted a psychology that made human beings stronger, not more dependent. He admired art for this reason. Art does not deny suffering. It transforms it. It gives pain a form. And in giving it form, it gives the psyche power over it. This is also why Nietzsche believed that truth itself is psychological. We do not seek truth because it is true. We seek truth because it serves life. Or because it protects us from life. Some truths energize. Others anesthetize. Nietzsche challenges us to ask, does this belief make me stronger? More alive? More capable of becoming? Or does it make me smaller, safer, quieter? In this sense, Nietzsche was not just the first deep psychologist. He was the most dangerous one. Because he did not offer techniques. He offered mirrors. And many people do not like what they see. When the mirror goes deep enough. Nietzsche understood that the psyche resists self-knowledge. It hides behind morality. Behind reason. Behind ideology. True psychology, for him, was an act of courage. The courage to look at one's motives. Without romanticism. To admit that even our highest ideals may be strategies for survival. That even our kindness may contain fear. That even our truths may be lies we need. And yet, Nietzsche does not end in despair. He ends in responsibility. If values are created, then we are responsible for what we worship. If meaning is not given, then we must become strong enough to create it. This is not optimism. It is a demand. Nietzsche's psychology does not promise peace. It promises depth. And depth always comes at a cost. But for those willing to pay it, it offers something rare. Not happiness, but intensity. Not certainty, but authenticity. Not comfort, but the possibility of becoming who you truly are. Beyond fear. Beyond resentment. Beyond borrowed values. Nietzsche once wrote that One must still have chaos in oneself. To give birth to a dancing star. This is psychology as alchemy. Turning suffering into strength. Turning confusion into clarity. Turning life itself into a work of art. And perhaps that is why Nietzsche still unsettles us. Because he does not speak to our opinions. He speaks to our condition. To the quiet tension we feel when the lights go out. To the sense that something in us is waiting to be lived, or has already been buried. Nietzsche does not ask you to believe. He asks you to look. And that may be the most psychological act of all.